Hey everybody, Johnny Bigot here. Good afternoon, greetings. We are somewhere around Greensburg, Indiana. The local time here is 12:53. Today, once again, it is September 22nd, 2016. I've decided I'm going to stop at the pilot truck stop here and get fuel, and I also need to get some breakfast. I haven't had breakfast today yet. I seriously doubt that I could get home tonight. We have 6 hours and 53 minutes remaining to drive before the 8-hour break. Okay, one of you wanted to know about the 11 hours and the 14-hour rule. First and foremost, we have 70 hours to work with in 8 days. Okay? Every day, as long as you can show a 10-hour break, you have 14 hours to accomplish your work for the day. Out of that 14 hours, you can only drive 11 hours. So again, you have 14 hours to drive your full 11 hours of driving. Why do they do that? Well, because once you start your day, your 14 hour, for example, let's just imagine, if you will, you punch into your e-log. Once you punch in, you can't stop it. Then the 14 hours, once you start it, 14 hours later, regardless of how short you drove, 14 hours later, you're done. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but basically, that's the whole idea. You punch in now, 14 hours later, even if you only drove 6 hours, 14 hours later, you're done. One of the reasons why they do that is you punch in, you go to your shipper or receiver. Okay, let's just say you punch in, you drive for 5 hours. Then you sat for 2 hours. You still have your 6 hours remaining to drive. But if you drove for 5 hours and you sat at standing still for 3 hours, now you only have 5 more hours to drive, not 6 hours, because you can't drive your 11 hours full, because you've already consumed your 14 hours. See, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 5 plus 5 is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So basically, I may have done my math wrong. Basically, what you do is the idea is that you can drive you can drive your 11 hours, but you can only have 3-hour break before longer than 3 hours. Then you start eating up your 11-hour driving time. For example, you drove for 5 hours, you sat for 4 hours. Now you only have 5 hours to drive, not 6 hours. That means in that day you only drove 10 hours, not 11 hours. Here's another scenario. You drove for 5 hours. All right, let me back it up a bit. You start your day. You did your let's just say I'm gonna round it off to 30-minute because it's easier for my brain to catch up. You start your day with a 30-minute pre-trip. Okay? You drove for 5 hours. Now you sat at a shipper for 3.5 hours. Now you can still drive your 6 hours. But if you did your pre-trip for 30 minutes, drove for 5 hours, and sat for 4.5 hours, now you can only drive. I'm all confused now. I'm no good without a calculator. Another scenario which is kind of easier. You drove for 5 hours. You sat for 6 hours. You can't drive your 11 hours straight, or your 11 hours now. But here's another scenario. You drove for 5 hours. But you took your 10-hour break after that. Even though you're still in the same time date, you can still drive another 11 hours. You're not restricted to driving 11 hours for that day. You can drive your 11 hours whenever, as long as you finish your 10-hour break. Unless, of course, you do a split, sleeper split. Let's just say you took your 10-hour break. Then you drove 8 hours. No. Alright, let's just do this. You took your 10-hour break. You drove your 11 hours with a 30-minute break in it. Now you have 70 hours to begin with. You just did your reset. So after you drove 11 hours, you went to the sleeper berth for 8 hours. That means you have, what was that? 9, 10, 11, 12, 11. Chances are you'll have your 3 hours to drive. Even though you haven't completed your 10-hour break, but you showed 8 hours of sleeper berth, you can drive for 3 hours, and then when you get to your destination, you go on a sleeper berth for 2 more hours. Then that basically is an equivalent to an 11 hour, 10-hour break. But you can't do that every day. I am no good at this. I can only do it in practice. I can't teach it. I usually don't do a split sleeper berth. It's way too confusing for me. Nothing better than a full 10-hour break. Dude, it's not flashing. For the life of me, I just cannot seem to remember the name of this town, Shelbyville. I could never memorize the name of this town. It just, I don't know. it's 1 o'clock over here. If I stop at this pilot, I am risking getting caught in the Indianapolis rush hour traffic. So why not just bypass this and get fuel in Lebanon, or I actually don't need fuel until I can go all the way to Gary, Indiana. My biggest problem is I'm hungry. I need breakfast. But I think I'm willing to sacrifice my hunger to avoid the rush hour traffic in Indianapolis. Yeah, I think that I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna take 465 north to 70 west to 65 north. I haven't done that, so let's give it a try. Let's give it a go. I'll catch you guys later. I gotta call the wife. Stay tuned. Peace.